what's going on YouTube? Or Storm here coming at you guys with the last episode of Intro to Week, which is now we're going to be talking about digital bugs. Digital bugs are a new archetype that was introduced in Shining Victories. It's a pretty underwhelming archetype as a whole, mostly because they only gave them 3 monsters. If it gives you an idea, Arrow Mages have four monsters that actually get played in the archetype 5 if you want to count a Romajar, but they only gave this archetype 3 monsters, and even the archetypes, like even Gradles, have more monsters than this particular archetype. So the archetype is basically, but anyway, with all that out of the way, it's a light level 3. All the main digital bug monsters are level 3 light insect monsters. The unfortunate thing is that they can only be used for light insect type exceed monsters, and outside of Giga Brilliant, there's not a lot of level rank 3 exceed insect type monsters. They do have some of the archetype basically revolves around putting your opponent's monsters in defense mode, and then they all get effects when they're exceed summon. It's similar to cards such as Rugged Gloves, cards like there's other cards like Heroic Champion Extra Sword, I think is the name of the card. They all have effects like that. The interesting thing is that they do work really well with Insectors, because mainly the level 3 ones. But anyway, by the way, let's go ahead and get to the deck profiles. First off, we have 3 copies of Digital Bug Cenobit. Cenobit's effect is when it's changed in a face-up attack and changed defense mode, you can special summon 1 level 3 insect type monster from your deck in defense position. So the cool thing about this is it's not limited to digital bugs. You can grab Dragonfly, you can grab Hornet, and Centipede from your deck as well, because they are level 3 insect type monsters, which is pretty nice. And when it's used for an Exceed summon, the monster can attack all defense position monsters once each. So it's similar effect to like Fusion, Susanoo, and there's a couple of other cards, like I think Raid Raptor Revolution Falcon, that have very similar effects. It's pretty nice. Being able to grab Hornet and Dragonfly from the deck, because they are at 1, is pretty nice. Then 3 copies of Web Soldier. And by the way, all of the digital bugs, like I said earlier, can only be used to make insect type exceed monsters. So once per turn, you can target 1 face-up attack position monster you control, change its defense position. So this allows you, if you have Web Soldier out, you can actually switch Cenobit to defense mode and trigger its effect. And if you do, special summon 1 level 3 insect monster from your hand in defense position. And it's an exceed monster used with this, when it's exceed summoned, allows you to change all your face-up defense position monsters opponent controls to 0, and if you do, they get changed defense mode. So it's sort of like it basically changes all your defense defense to 0, and then puts them in defense mode. And then 3 copies of Digital Bug I'll just call it Cocoon Denser. Its effect is that you can, if it's in attack mode, you can target 1 level 3 insect monster in your graveyard. It goes to defense mode and it special summons itself. So basically, you summon Cocoon Denser and you can grab any insect monster you need, level 3 insect monster from your graveyard, and special summon it. So basically, it sets you up for an exceed summon. And 3 copies of Howling Insect. The unfortunate thing about this deck is all them are level. This is probably the only really thing you have. So whenever it's destroyed by battle and sits to the graveyard, allows you to grab an insect monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. I normally do not like cards like Howling Insect, but there aren't enough cards out there that work with insects. I mean, there is Resonant Insect, there's Doom Dozer. But the problem is all the digital bugs aren't level 5 or higher, so you can't search them with Resonant Insect's effect. I mean, you could play like an Echuria plant engine with this deck, but I just feel like Howling Insect is basically the best option you're really going to have. Normally do not like cards like Howling Insect, but it is a thing, and it's the best option we have. And then for the Insector engine, we're playing 1 Dragonfly, 1 Hornet, and 3 Centipede. You guys who played Insectors is probably pretty familiar. Dragonfly grabs Insector monsters from the deck when a card monster equipped to it is sent to the graveyard. Hornet can pop itself, so you've seen all the Hornet and Dragonfly shenanigans. And 3 Centipedes kind of speaks for itself. If you've played Insectors, you know how these cards work. 1 copy of BLS, Light Dark deck. We have a pretty even ratio of light and dark monsters. 1 Mathematician to send our Hornet to the graveyard, and then 1 some of our Digibugs, and 1 Birdman, because it's kind of nice being able to actually use Synchro Summon. Then for our spells, one Rikeki. I think Rikeki is pretty much a staple, right? Even though a lot of people are kind of cutting it, I still think it's a really good card. Two Forbidden Lance. This deck is one of those decks where you really need your normal summon to go off, so that's why you play Lance. Since it's like a lot of NXT decks have this in common, is you play Lance because if your normal summon gets disrupted, you just cry salty tears. One copy of Foolish Burial, same we get our Hornet in the graveyard. One copy of a sword. You really don't need more than one sword because most of the time when you're searching for this, you're probably going for game anyways. 3 copies of Twin Twister to clear back row, as like this deck just doesn't like dealing with back row. 3 copies of Budget Emergencies. This is probably one of the better support cards in the archetypes. Basically, it's basically like what's that card called? A double-edged sword technique, except for level 3 insects. So you target 2 level 3 insect monsters in your graveyard, special summon them. Their effects are negated. You can only activate 1 per turn, and then you can banish it and exceed monster from your graveyard. Level of all level 3 insect monsters you currently control becomes equal to the banished exceed monster's rank until the end of the turn. So it's kind of a weird effect. I don't know if I read it correctly, but that's kind of a weird effect. But it seems like a pretty dang good card. And 3 Call the Haunted. So it's kind of like it's much like thing you really need recovery cards in this deck. So I feel like it's a staple. 3 Quaking Mirror Force. Now everyone know if you've been watching my stream, watching my stuff, you know I love this card. And in this particular deck, Quaking Mirror Force is amazing because you have so many cards that activate when your opponent that work around defense position monsters. And typically, if you put in a whole field of your opponent's monsters in defense mode, they are going set face down and they can't switch. That's really good. 1 Bottomless Trap Hole. Bottomless is still a really, really good card. And then 2 copies of Solemn Strike. I didn't want to run the whole Solemn Brigade just because I didn't really have room, but you could if you so wish. Then for the extra deck, for the Synchros, 1 copy of Underground Arachna. This is a really old card. You use a Dark Tuner. In this case, that's Birdman, and 1 non-tuner insect monster. There aren't a lot of decks where you can actually make this card, but this is one of those. So if it attacks, your opponent can activate spell or trap effects until the end of the damage step. So there's an Armadi is 4 spells or traps. So once per turn, you can equip a face-up monster your opponent controls to the card. If it would be destroyed by battle, you can destroy it instead. Being able to snatch opponent's monsters off the field is always good. It's not the best card, but I really like finally having a deck where you can actually make it viably. You might as well run it. 1 copy of Trishula. Trishula sort of speaks for itself. It wins games on its own. It's always an optimal play. For the Exceeds, 1 Angineer and 1 Zenmanes. These are kind of just the staples. Like, there's a lot of different cards you can play over these, but it's really, up to you. 1 Gaia Dragon. You can actually stack Gaia Dragon on Corbage and Rhinoceros. I don't know how to say that, but it's Gaia Dragon is probably one of the most important cards to have if you're playing like a deck that makes rank 5s. You can stack it on top of Corbage, which is really nice. 2 Giga Brilliant. I really didn't find the need for more than 2 because like you're running, you most of the time you want to make a Scar Wrap anyways. So it works out pretty good. Then 3 copies of Scar Radiator. I don't know how to say it, but anyways, once per turn you can detach 2 Exceed materials from this card. Then target 1 monster opponent controls, change the battle position. If you do, negates effect until the end of the turn. So basically it does what Giant Hand should have done in the first place. And then once per turn, when it destroys an opponent's my monster and sends it to the graveyard, you can detach the destroyed monster to this card as Exceed material. Now it's only 1800, but if your opponent has a field full of small defense position monsters due to quaking, it's pretty easy to get the effect. Being able to just attach the monster's Exceed material is pretty cool. Then 3 copies of Digital Bug Corbage. Corbage's effect says you can also exceed summon this card by detaching 2 materials from a rank 3 or 4 exceed insect monster you control. So if you have 2 Radiator and Giga Brilliant, then you can target 1 face-up defense. You can detach once per turn. You can detach 1 exceed material from this card, then target 1 defense position monster your opponent controls. Shuffle into the deck. And then it says if a battle position from a monster opponent on the field is changed, you can activate attach 1 insect monster from your graveyard as Exceed material. So I kind of like, even though it has a pretty hefty cost to actually get it out, it's pretty nice because you can just every time all your cards do change battle positions. When they do, you can just keep attaching materials, which is pretty nice. And then lastly, 2 copies of a Digital Bug Rhinoceros. I'll just call it Rhinoceros, but it basically has the same effect as corbage, but the effect basically says you can detach 2 Exceed material from your corbage to rank it up into Rhinoceros. So its effect is when it attacks a defense position monster, you can inflict piercing damage to your opponent, and once per turn, you detach 1 Exceed material from this card, destroy all the face-up monsters your opponent. So it's basically a hammer shot except for defense position monsters. Not bad. I mean, overall, in summary, I think the Digibugs is an interesting archetype, but it's got a long way to go, to receive competitive viability, especially when you only have 3 Exceed monsters in the entire archetype. So anyway, guys, as always, I thank you guys for watching this video today. Really appreciate it when you guys watch my videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays for more Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you like what you saw from this video, please subscribe. This is Storm, signing out.